Imagine if your job were illegal unless you got a permission slip from the government. In the 1950s, only 1 in 20 Americans had to get one of these permission slips, known as an occupational license. Today, that number stands at 1 in 3.
Occupational licensure laws are too often about economic protectionism, not about protecting public health and safety. And that's why it's essential that these laws are carefully scrutinized to make sure that this is not about established businesses just trying to restrict competition.
Recently, the Institute for Justice conducted a study of occupational licensure around the country and in Utah, and the results were not very favorable. Utah was found to have a significantly higher burden for many occupations.
Utah ranked 12th in how oppressive and onerous the licensure laws are in the state.
I'm a general contractor, Jeff McNeil & Sons Construction. My 2 sons work with me. When I first started in construction, I received an R100 license. It allows me to do residential construction. I then wanted to do some commercial construction. I was turned down on a project because I didn't have that commercial license. And so I went after 35 years to take that license, and the state told me that I didn't have 4 years experience working as a commercial contractor, even though I'd had 35 years experience. Finally, I convinced the state that I ought to be able to be allowed to sit for the test. I sat for the exam, and quite frankly, if that qualifies someone to build a project, they're not going to be a very good builder. The questions were ridiculous. The questions, I could have taught a high school kid how to pass the exam. So that exam, if the state's really trying to protect the consumer, that's not doing it. 35 years ago when I got my license, I had to prove to the state that I had some experience, pay them a fee, and then for 35 years I've paid them a fee. Often people tell me, well, you need a license so that the consumer's protected. But the customers that I have are protected by my reputation. And people with licenses are also bad players. I've known contractors that had a license and then have ended up in some kind of a problem with their customers. So I don't see where the license does that. The state doesn't come and check the quality of my work. They don't check my bids and my estimates and my cost to my consumer. They just want me to have this arbitrary license that somehow protects the consumer. And I've never found a customer yet that can show me how that license protected them. Especially in today's world with Google and all of these reviews, the bad actors can be sorted out that way. And that's what today's consumer's doing. They can immediately look up and find reviews on me, or find history that isn't provided by the state, but is provided by the consumer themselves. And then those bad actors are weeded out. The free market can be everywhere. The state can't possibly be everywhere. Internet, referrals, reputation, that's what protects the consumer. They can check into bad actors. Is somebody going to be harmed along the way? We have civil laws that protect that, liability insurance, those types of things that protect the consumer far more than the state license does.
Not only does occupational licensure not protect consumers very well, it actually can harm them by interfering in the marketplace, making it more difficult for business owners to help their customers.
I own Salisbury Plumbing. I started my company 12 years ago. I wanted to go out on my own and have grown to 30 employees now. I have a ratio that I have to operate under. Every journeyman plumber, I have 2 apprentices that can work under them. And they have to be licensed through the state of Utah. And I have laborers, but they can't plumb. I can only hire who the state grants a license to. I can only have so many laborers. If I hire somebody and teach them how to set a toilet, and they don't have a license, I can get fined for that. I had an employee who applied for licensure, was denied. He was qualified, I taught him, and do I just fire him at that point? I kept him working, and he got fined for not having a license, and I went to pay the fine, and they wouldn't let me pay the fine because he wasn't licensed. I said, well, you took my money to license him and denied him. And they said, well, resubmit a license. So we did so. They approved him, and then I had to pay a late payment for being late on the original fine. I worry that I can't grow my business anymore. I mean, we're in a state that's construction is huge, and you know, there's plenty of opportunity out there, but it's very limited right now in who can join that. I can find the people. It's just a matter of let the state let me put them to work. We'll put them to work.
So it's always essential to be on the side of private property rights and free markets, not just whatever established business interests might want.
I am working on being licensed as a BOWENWORK practitioner. Unfortunately, that license doesn't fit under the licensure laws at this point. BOWENWORK is a soft tissue therapy that uses the muscles and the nervous system and the fascia to send a message to the brain through soft touch, fully clothed, that reminds the brain what your body is supposed to be doing originally.
For many years I was playing sports, playing soccer mainly as a goalkeeper, playing basketball. Over the course of years playing, had many injuries.
I had to have at least 10 case studies in that process, and I approached Josh as a friend and asked him if he would be my guinea pig.
I was extremely skeptical at first. Had not had very good experiences with chiropractic and massage therapy, hadn't seen the results, and had never heard of this. The first session, I was to the point where I almost couldn't even get out of bed. My wife had to help me get out of bed so I could actually come over and have her work on me. And that first night was interesting because I could feel a change. From that improvement, we kept having more sessions, and it got to the point where I would go months without coming over because my body had actually recovered.
As the law stands right now, in order to practice in Utah, I would have to become massage therapy licensed. I've already spent a lot of money and hundreds of hours of time in my education, and now I have to put in more for something I'm never going to use. As a student, because I am missing the one last class, I am allowed to practice under the law because I'm not licensed. I'm still learning, and I can help people like Josh. But if I take that last class and get my license through BOTEC, I'll get fined or thrown in jail or shut down or all of the above. It's extremely frustrating. It doesn't make sense to prohibit BOWENWORK because we're just trying to help people. That's what the medical profession is for.
I believe my customers are just looking for honesty, integrity, good workmanship, quality, all the things that any other company provides, and the license doesn't really factor into any of that whatsoever.
My customers' needs in Idaho are no different than they are here. They want quality projects, they want it at a fair market value, and they want to hire someone that they can trust. The lack of or the enforcement of government regulations doesn't change that. So why in Idaho do I build a quality project exactly the same way I build it here, and yet here I have this extraordinary fees and this training and all these things I need to do to satisfy my customer exactly the same way? Why are the customers any different?
If Utah were to deregulate a little bit in this case, or in other cases similar to this, it could allow people like Nikki the opportunity to put their education, their sacrifice, their efforts into practice and help people like me, or help their own family or others who are in need and aren't getting help in what they've tried so far.
As a business owner, I've had to rethink licensure and ask the question of, does it actually help anybody?
I think we ought to rethink licensure in Utah to free up the free market. In Idaho, where I don't need a license, I still build the same quality home. Consumers are still protected. Why not in Utah?
I think we all need to rethink what we require as far as licensing and look at the ways in which we can allow someone like Nikki to practice and help people.
It's so important to defend the right to earn an honest living and be on the side of free markets.
Bye.